Welcome, and we are back for another day of reading through the Bible in a year. Today is July the 31st. We're going to be reading Psalms chapter 63. Esther, I had to think about that a minute. We're getting into a new book. Esther, chapters 1 and 2, Acts chapter 26, and Proverbs chapter 27. And then we are going to learn a little bit more about Oliver Wilcott. And then we have a fascinating article titled A Scriptural Bill of Rights. And so let's get right into it today. We're going to start out in the book of Psalms, chapter 63.
Psalm 63, a psalm of David when he was in the wilderness of Judah.
O God, you are my God. Early will I seek you. My soul thirsts for you. My flesh longs for you in a dry and thirsty land where there is no water. So I have looked for you in the sanctuary to see your power and your glory. Because your loving kindness is better than life, my lips shall praise you. Thus I will bless you while I live. I will lift up my hands in your name. My soul shall be satisfied as with marrow and fatness, and my mouth shall praise you with joyful lips. When I remember you on my bed, I meditate on you in the night watches. Because you have been my help, therefore in the shadow of your wings I will rejoice. My soul follows close behind you. Your right hand upholds me. But those who seek my life to destroy it shall go into the lower parts of the earth. They shall fall by the sword. They shall be a portion for jackals. But the king shall rejoice in God. Everyone who swears by him shall glory. But the mouth of those who speak lies shall be stopped.
Psalms chapter 63. We are going to start a new book today, Esther. And we are going to read chapters 1 and 2. Here's chapter 1.
The Book of Esther. Now it came to pass, in the days of Ahasuerus, this was the Ahasuerus who reigned over 127 provinces from India to Ethiopia. In those days, when King Ahasuerus sat on the throne of his kingdom, which was in Shushan the citadel, that in the 3rd year of his reign he made a feast for all his officials and servants, the powers of Persia and Media, the nobles, and the princes of the provinces being before him, when he showed the riches of his glorious kingdom and the splendor of his excellent majesty for many days, 180 days in all. And when these days were completed, the king made a feast lasting 7 days for all the people who were present in Shushan the citadel, from great to small, in the court of the garden of the king's palace. There were white and blue linen curtains fastened with cords of fine linen and purple on silver rods and marble pillars, and the couches were of gold and silver on a mosaic pavement of alabaster, turquoise, and white and black marble. And they served drinks in golden vessels, each vessel being different from the other, with royal wine in abundance, according to the generosity of the king. In accordance with the law, the drinking was not compulsory, for so the king had ordered all the officers of his household that they should do according to each man's pleasure. Queen Vashti also made a feast for the women in the royal palace which belonged to King Ahasuerus. On the 7th day, when the heart of the king was merry with wine, he commanded Mehuman, Biztha, Harbona, Bigtha, Abagtha, Zetha, and Carcass, 7 eunuchs who served in the presence of King Ahasuerus, to bring Queen Vashti before the king, wearing her royal crown, in order to show her beauty to the people and the officials, for she was beautiful to behold. But Queen Vashti refused to come at the king's command, brought by his eunuchs. Therefore the king was furious, and his anger burned within him. Then the king said to the wise men who understood the times, for this was the king's manner toward all who knew law and justice, those closest to him being Karshina, Shetha, Admatha, Tarshish, Meres, Marsina, and Memucan, the 7 princes of Persia and Media, who had access to the king's presence and who ranked highest in the kingdom.
What shall we do to Queen Vashti according to law? Because she did not obey the command of King Ahasuerus, brought to her by the eunuchs.
And Memucan answered before the king and the princes.
Queen Vashti has not only wronged the king, but also all the princes and all the people who are in all the provinces of King Ahasuerus. For the queen's behavior will become known to all women, so that they will despise their husbands in their eyes, when they report King Ahasuerus commanded Queen Vashti to be brought in before him, but she did not come. This very day, the noble ladies of Persia and Media will say to all the king's officials that they have heard of the behavior of the queen. Thus there will be excessive contempt and wrath. If it pleases the king, let a royal decree go out from him, and let it be recorded in the laws of the Persians and the Medes, so that it will not be altered, that Vashti shall come no more before King Ahasuerus, and let the king give her royal position to another who is better than she. When the king's decree which he will make is proclaimed throughout all his empire, for it is great, all wives will honor their husbands, both great and small.
And the reply pleased the king and the princes, and the king did according to the word of Memucan. Then he sent letters to all the king's provinces, to each province in its own script, and to every people in their own language, that each man should be master in his own house, and speak in the language of his own people.
And now chapter number 2.
After these things, when the wrath of King Ahasuerus subsided, he remembered Vashti, what she had done, and what had been decreed against her. Then the king's servants who attended him said,
"Let beautiful young virgins be sought for the king, and let the king appoint officers in all the provinces of his kingdom, that they may gather all the beautiful young virgins to Shushan the citadel, into the women's quarters, under the custody of Hegai the king's eunuch, custodian of the women. And let beauty preparations be given them. Then let the young woman who pleases the king be queen instead of Vashti."
This thing pleased the king, and he did so. In Shushan the citadel, there was a certain Jew whose name was Mordecai, the son of Jair, the son of Shimei, the son of Kish, a Benjamite. Kish had been carried away from Jerusalem with the captives who were being captured with Jeconiah, king of Judah, whom Nebuchadnezzar, the king of Babylon, had carried away. And Mordecai had brought up Hadassah, that is, Esther, his uncle's daughter, for she had neither father nor mother. The young woman was lovely and beautiful. When her father and mother died, Mordecai took her as his own daughter, So it was, when the king's command and decree were heard, and when many young women were gathered at Shushan the citadel, under the custody of Hegai, that Esther also was taken to the king's palace, into the care of Hegai, the custodian of the women. Now the young woman pleased him, and she obtained his favor. So he readily gave beauty preparations to her, besides her allowance. Then 7 choice maidservants were provided for her from the king's palace, and he moved her and her maidservants to the best place in the house of the women. Esther had not revealed her people or family, for Mordecai had charged her not to reveal it. And every day Mordecai paced in front of the court of the women's quarters to learn of Esther's welfare and what was happening to her. Each young woman's turn came to go in to King Ahasuerus after she had completed 12 months' preparation, according to the regulation for the women, for thus were the days of their preparation apportioned: 6 months with oil of myrrh, and 6 months with perfumes and preparations for beautifying women. Thus prepared, each young woman went to the king, and she was given whatever she desired to take with her from the women's quarters to the king's palace. In the evening she went, and in the morning she returned to the second house of the women, to the custody of Sheashgaz, the king's eunuch who kept the concubines. She would not go to the king again unless the king delighted in her and called for her by name. Now when the turn came for Esther, the daughter of Abihail, the uncle of Mordecai, who had taken her as his daughter, to go into the king, she requested nothing but what Hegai, the king's eunuch, the custodian of the women, advised. And Esther obtained favor in the sight of all who saw her. So Esther was taken to King Ahasuerus into his royal palace in the 10th month, which is the month of Tebeth, in the 7th year of his reign. The king loved Esther more than all the other women, and she obtained grace and favor in his sight more than all the virgins. So he set the royal crown upon her head and made her queen instead of Vashti. Then the king made a great feast, the Feast of Esther, for all his officials and servants, and he proclaimed a holiday in the provinces and gave gifts according to the generosity of a king. When virgins were gathered together a second time, Mordecai sat within the king's gate. Now Esther had not revealed her family and her people, just as Mordecai had charged her. For Esther obeyed the command of Mordecai as when she was brought up by him. In those days, while Mordecai sat within the king's gate, 2 of the king's eunuchs, Bigthan and Teresh, doorkeepers, became furious and sought to lay hands on King Ahasuerus. So the matter became known to Mordecai, who told Queen Esther, and Esther informed the king in Mordecai's name. And when an inquiry was made into the matter, it was confirmed, and both were hanged on a gallows. And it was written in the book of the Chronicles, in the presence of the king.
Esther chapters 1 and 2. Now let's turn in our Bibles to the book of Acts, and we are going to read chapter 26. Acts 26.
Then Agrippa said to Paul,
"You are permitted to speak for yourself."
So Paul stretched out his hand and answered,
I think myself happy, King Agrippa, because today I shall answer for myself before you concerning all the things of which I am accused by the Jews. especially because you are expert in all customs and questions which have to do with the Jews. Therefore, I beg you to hear me patiently. My manner of life from my youth, which was spent from the beginning among my own nation at Jerusalem, all the Jews know. They knew me from the first, if they were willing to testify, that according to the strictest sect of our religion, I lived a Pharisee. And now I stand and am judged for the hope of the promise made by God to our fathers. To this promise our 12 tribes, earnestly serving God night and day, hope to attain. For this hope's sake, King Agrippa, I am accused by the Jews. Why should it be thought incredible by you that God raises the dead? Indeed, I myself thought I must do many things contrary to the name of Jesus of Nazareth. This I also did in Jerusalem, and many of the saints I shut up in prison, having received authority from the chief priests. And when they were put to death, I cast my vote against them. And I punished them often in every synagogue and compelled them to blaspheme. And being exceedingly enraged against them, I persecuted them even to foreign cities. While thus occupied, as I journeyed to Damascus with authority and commission from the chief priests, at midday, O king, along the road, I saw a light from heaven, brighter than the sun, shining around me and those who journeyed with me. And when we all had fallen to the ground, I heard a voice speaking to me and saying in the Hebrew language, Saul, Saul, why are you persecuting me? It is hard for you to kick against the goads. So I said, Who are you, Lord? And he said, I am Jesus, whom you are persecuting. But rise and stand on your feet, for I have appeared to you for this purpose, to make you a minister and a witness both of the things which you have seen and of the things which I will yet reveal to you. I will deliver you from the Jewish people as well as from the Gentiles, to whom I now send you to open their eyes in order to turn them from darkness to light and from the power of Satan to God, that they may receive forgiveness of sins and an inheritance among those who are sanctified by faith in me. Therefore, King Agrippa, I was not disobedient to the heavenly vision, but declared first to those in Damascus and in Jerusalem and throughout all the region of Judea, and then to the Gentiles, that they should repent, turn to God, and do works befitting repentance. For these reasons the Jews seized me in the temple and tried to kill me. Therefore, having obtained help from God, to this day I stand, witnessing both to small and great, saying no other things than those which the prophets and Moses said would come, that the Christ would suffer, that he would be the first to rise from the dead, and would proclaim light to the Jewish people and to the Gentiles.
Now, as he thus made his defense, Festus said with a loud voice,
Paul, you are beside yourself. Much learning is driving you mad.
I am not mad, most noble Festus, but speak the words of truth and reason. For the king, before whom I also speak freely, knows these things. For I am convinced that none of these things escapes his attention, since this thing was not done in a corner. King Agrippa, do you believe the prophets? I know that you do believe.
You almost persuade me to become a Christian.
I would to God that not only you, but also all who hear me today might become both almost and altogether such as I am, except for these chains.
When he had said these things, the king stood up, as well as the governor and Bernice and those who sat with them. And when they had gone aside, they talked among themselves.
This man is doing nothing deserving of death or chains.
Then Agrippa said to Festus,
This man might have been set free if he had not appealed to Caesar.
And now let's turn to the book of Proverbs and chapter number 27.
Do not boast about tomorrow, for you do not know what a day may bring forth. Let another man praise you, and not your own mouth, a stranger, and not your own lips. A stone is heavy, and sand is weighty, but a fool's wrath is heavier than both of them. Wrath is cruel, and anger a torrent, but who is able to stand before jealousy? Open rebuke is better than love carefully concealed. Faithful are the wounds of a friend, but the kisses of an enemy are deceitful. A satisfied soul loathes the honeycomb, but to a hungry soul every bitter thing is sweet. Like a bird that wanders from its nest is a man who wanders from his place. Ointment and perfume delight the heart, and the sweetness of a man's friend gives delight by hearty counsel. Do not forsake your own friend or your father's friend, nor go to your brother's house in the day of your calamity. Better is a neighbor nearby than a brother far away. My son, be wise and make my heart glad, that I may answer him who reproaches me. A prudent man foresees evil and hides himself. The simple pass on and are punished. Take the garment of him who is surety for a stranger, and hold it in pledge when he is surety for a seductress. He who blesses his friend with a loud voice, rising early in the morning, it will be counted a curse to him. A continual dripping on a very rainy day, and a contentious woman are alike. Whoever restrains her restrains the wind, and grasps oil with his right hand. As iron sharpens iron, so a man sharpens the countenance of his friend. Whoever keeps the fig tree will eat its fruit. So he who waits on his master will be honored. As in water, face reflects face, so a man's heart reveals the man. Hell and destruction are never full, so the eyes of man are never satisfied. The refining pot is for silver, and the furnace for gold, and a man is valued by what others say of him. Though you grind a fool in a mortar with a pestle along with crushed grain, yet his foolishness will not depart from him. Be diligent to know the state of your flocks, and attend to your herds. For riches are not forever, nor does a crown endure to all generations. When the hay is removed, and the tender grass shows itself, and the herbs of the mountains are gathered in, the lambs will provide your clothing, and the goats the price of a field. You shall have enough goat's milk for your food, for the food of your household, and the nourishment of your maidservants.
And that is the scriptural readings for today. We've got two other articles, one about Oliver Wilcock, and then a scriptural Bill of Rights. Let's take a look here at Oliver Wilcock, 1726 to 1797. After graduating from Yale, he entered military service, became an attorney, medical doctor, and sheriff. As tensions with Great Britain grew prior to the Revolution, he became a member of the Connecticut State Council and also a judge, positions he held throughout the Revolution. Elected to the Continental Congress, he was appointed a Commissioner of Indian Affairs for the Northern Department, tasked with the difficult responsibility of inducing the Iroquois Indians to remain neutral in the conflict. The following year, he signed the Declaration of Independence and was appointed Major General of the state militia, leading 14 Connecticut regiments to the defense of New York and being present at the Battle of Saratoga, the first major American military victory. After the Revolution, he became lieutenant governor and then governor, and interestingly, both his father and his son were also governors of the state. Oliver Wilcock. Now we have another article, and this is very interesting. This article is called A Scriptural Bill of Rights. After the signing of the Constitution by the framers at the Constitutional Convention in Philadelphia on September the 17th, 1787, it then had to be ratified by 9 of the 13 states in order for it to become law. Beginning on December the 7th, the state conventions of Delaware, Pennsylvania, New Jersey, Georgia, and Connecticut ratified it in quick succession. But its smooth sailing to ratification faltered in Massachusetts, when the Anti-Federalists, as the Constitution's opponents were to become known, rallied opposition, primarily on the ground that the Constitution contained no Bill of Rights. The movement in favor of a Bill of Rights gained momentum in the state conventions of New Hampshire, Virginia, New York, threatening to bring the ratification process to a complete halt. Dissonance reached its apex in North Carolina when in August of 1788 the state convention resolved that it would not ratify the Constitution until it was amended to include a Bill of Rights. The Anti-Federalists argued for a declaration of individual rights as a limit on the powers conferred upon the central government, pointing to the fact that the constitutions of almost all of the states had a Bill of Rights protecting the liberties of the people by limiting the state governments. This sentiment was so widespread that the Federalists, as the Constitution's supporters were known, agreed to support a federal Bill of Rights when the first Congress assembled under the Constitution. With this promise, the Constitution was ratified by all 13 states and put into operation on September the 13th, 1788. True to his word, on June the 8th, 1789, James Madison of Virginia, one of the leading architects of the U.S. Constitution, introduced a package of amendments based largely upon the declarations of rights in the existing state constitutions. Of those proposed amendments, 10 would be ratified by vote of the state legislatures in accordance with the amendment procedure in Article 5 of the Constitution. Those first 10 amendments to our Constitution are known as the Bill of Rights, ratified on December the 15th, 1791, Our Bill of Rights is not just America's Charter of Liberties from government power, but it has become a monument of freedom to the world. Yet, as Americans, we have little understanding of the various provisions inside our Bill of Rights, nor are we familiar with the origins of the guarantees to our freedom contained in them. In this day of language overload, you will be pleased to know that the text of our entire Bill of Rights contains only 468 words. The Fifth Amendment is the longest, totaling 117 words. The shortest, the Eighth Amendment, is a mere 12 words. But the length of our Bill of Rights was not the product of a remarkable foresight that one day America would become a generation of non-readers. No, our bill's length was determined by the fact that our founders had something very definite in mind when they framed it. As James Madison acknowledged when he introduced the amendments in that first Congress, these amendments were designed as effectual provisions against encroachments on particular rights, safeguards to which the people have been accused. I'm not sure of the word. Accused them to have interposed between them and the magistrate who exercises sovereign power. I'm just going to move on. In other words, the Bill of Rights did not create the rights that it was designed to secure, but secured rights that pre-existed the document. For instance, the word religion in the First Amendment to our Constitution had made its initial appearance 15 years before in Article 1, Section 16 of the Virginia Bill of Rights. The Virginia Bill of Rights defined religion as the duty which we owe to our Creator, the manner of discharging of which can be directed only by reason and conviction, not by force or violence. When placed in a Bill of Rights, religion is not defined as a theological, sociological, or physiological term. Rather, religion takes on a legal definition designed to secure to the people freedom from government coercion. It states that there are certain duties that man must perform that are enforceable only by reason or conviction, subject only to the dictates of conscience. Religion, then, is a jurisdictional term securing the right of conscience from the force of law with respect to those duties owed exclusively to the Creator. Almost all of the key words and phrases in our Bill of Rights were carefully selected from pre-existing documents that either define the words more specifically or which reflected well-known events that had inspired earlier foundational documents. Some of those expressions, such as the due process of law in the Fifth Amendment, stretched as far back as 1354, when the English Parliament declared, and I quote, that no man of what estate or condition that he be shall be put out of land or tenement, nor taken, nor imprisoned, nor disinherited, nor put to death, without being brought in answer by due process of law. Our Bill of Rights, then, marked a culmination, not the commencement, of a monumental drama for freedom from excessive governmental power. Not only was it preceded by the Magna Carta, a 1215 charter that required the King of England to proclaim certain liberties, but a host of other English documents dating from 1215 and extending to the English Bill of Rights of 1689. Of the Magna Carta, Richard Perry, writing for the American Bar Association in Sources of Our Liberties, states, and I quote, "The liberties of the American citizens depend upon the existence of established and known rules of law limiting the authority and discretion of men wielding the power of government. Magna Carta announced the rule of law. This was its great contribution. It is this characteristic which has provided throughout the years the foundation on which has come to rest the entire structure of Anglo-America constitutional liberties." And what Perry has said here is true. From 1215 until 1791, when our Bill of Rights became part of our Constitution, many important monuments to the rule of law were established. The First Amendment. Madison's proposed amendments to the Constitution began with the guarantee of freedom of religion. Followed in this order: speech, press, assembly, petition, keep and bear arms, and freedom from forced quartering of soldiers to one's home. Madison's order, in which these freedoms were initially proposed, was never altered. Eventually, these guarantees would appear as the first three amendments to our Constitution. The appearance of the two distinct freedoms of religion as the first liberties set forth in our Bill of Rights was no accident. Securing such freedoms from civil government interference is the first business of any civil order. As James Madison wrote in his famous Memorial and Remonstrance, "Before any man can be considered as a member of civil society, he must be considered as a subject of the great Governor of the universe. And if a member of a civil society who entered into any subordinate association must always do it with a reservation of his duty to the general authority, much more must every man who becomes a member of any particular civil society do it with a saving of his allegiance to the universal sovereign." This obligation to God, Madison claimed, provided the foundation for the freedom of the heart and mind of every man from civil rule. The religion of every man must be left to the conviction and conscience of every man, and is the right of every man to exercise it as these may indicate. This right, in its nature, is an unalienable right. It is unalienable because the opinions of men cannot follow the dictates of other men. It is unalienable also because what is here a right towards men is a duty towards the Creator. This duty is precedent both in order of time and degree of obligation to the claims of civil society. In order to acknowledge God's exclusive sovereignty over man's duty toward God, freedom of religion requires jurisdictional immunity from the power of the civil authorities. So the language of the First Amendment is stated in absolute terms. Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion, or prohibiting the free exercise thereof. Emphasis added. For as Madison mandated, in matters of religion, no man's right is abridged by the institution of civil society, and that religion is wholly exempt from its cognization. It is unfathomable to hold otherwise. When Jesus said, "Render to Caesar," he clearly reserved a necessary prerequisite. Render to God the things that are God's. Mark 12:17. The Scriptures clearly declare that the entire earth is the Lord's and all it contains. Psalms 24:1. That all creation is owned by our Creator, and that all men are first subject to God, who gives us all we have and upon whom we are dependent for every breath we breathe, is a given. It is an immutable fact. Therefore, as a purely jurisdictional matter, our relationship with God is a realm in which government has no authority. It never has. And any authority it does have in other matters outside of religion is solely due to God's design, for all authority comes from God. Romans 13:1. Our Bill of Rights also extends unconditional protection to the next four freedoms guaranteed by the First Amendment. The monumental text reads, "Congress shall make no law abridging the freedom of speech or of the press, or the right of people peacefully to assemble, and to petition the government for a redress of grievances, that the people are sovereign, not the government, and the people retain a residual sovereignty to ensure that their elected and appointed officials serve the people, not the other way around." The Second through Fifth Amendments. It is our own Declaration of Independence that states, "When a long train of abuses and usurpations evinces a design to reduce the people under absolute despotism, it is their right, it is their duty to throw off such government." In order to protect this right for our people, James Madison put forward the Second Amendment, securing the right of the people to keep and bear arms. The right to keep and bear arms had been affirmed in the 1689 English Bill of Rights, but the right was limited, first to only those subjects who were Protestants, and second, only for their defense suitable to their conditions, and even then, third, only as allowed by law. The Second Amendment embraced a far more robust right. First, it was a right of the people, of all United States citizens without exception. Second, it was a right that was not just for self-defense, but for the defense of the nation against tyranny, guaranteeing to the people their own self-governed militia to the security of a free state. And third, it guaranteed the right against any infringement by the civil authorities, eliminating the necessity of obtaining a permit from the government, as had been the practice in England. The Third, Fourth, and portions of the Fifth Amendment are designed to protect the people's right to private property. The Third Amendment bans the forcible quartering of soldiers in houses except by consent of the owner, the house being one's castle. The first sentence of the Fourth Amendment protects the right of the people to be secure in their persons, houses, papers, and effects against unreasonable searches and seizures. Early in America's history, this ban on unreasonable searches and seizures protected private property from any search or seizure of the property unless the government had a superior property right. The second half of the Fourth Amendment is designed to protect the people from the general warrant, disallowing searches and seizures based upon suspicion, requiring by oath or affirmation probable cause, particularly describing the place to be searched and the person or thing to be seized. The Fifth Amendment protects the people's property from being denied without due process of law and from the government's taking their property for any but public use, and even then requires just compensation. All of these protections of private property are founded upon the common law that recognized the biblical foundation for private ownership of property set forth in the dominion mandate of Genesis 1:26 through 28. The Fifth Amendment through the 10th Amendment. The remaining portions of the Fifth Amendment, the right to grand jury indictment for capital offenses against double jeopardy, self-incrimination, and due process of law. And the Sixth Amendment, procedural protections for defendants in criminal cases, are designed to protect the liberties of the people. These procedural barriers are rooted in bedrock biblical principles designed to ensure that the civil government's enforcement powers are limited by the rule of law even when applied to the most heinous offenses. Found in Deuteronomy chapter 17, verses 2 through 7. The jury trial guarantee in the Sixth and Seventh Amendments is also rooted in Scripture and can be tracked back to Numbers 35, verses 24 and 25, which provided that a man could not be convicted of murder except by the judgment of the congregation. And the Eighth Amendment, prohibition against excessive bail or fines and cruel and unusual punishments, is based upon the biblical principle that punishment is to be proportional to the blameworthiness of the perpetrator and the harm to the victim. The final two amendments give us guarantees through rules of construction that help us interpret our Constitution and Bill of Rights properly. While neither offers any specific substantive or procedural rights, both affirm two important constitutional truths. The Ninth Amendment testifies that the rights of the people did not originate with our Constitution, but pre-existed it. We know this because our rights come directly from God, and they are evidenced through our discovery of the laws of nature and of nature's God. The 10th Amendment attests that the national government is a government solely of limited, enumerated powers, not unlimited, plenary powers. Thus, it states that the powers not delegated to the United States by the Constitution, nor prohibited by it to the states, are reserved to the states and the people. Read together the 9th and 10th Amendments make it clear that the people retain their civil sovereignty and that their state governments are their civil rules for all matters not specifically granted to the national government. By retaining the people's sovereign right to change the form of government, our Bill of Rights reminds us that government officials are servants of the people, not their lords and benefactors, and warns us, as Jesus reminded his disciples, not to submit to worldly tyrants. See Luke chapter 22 and verses 25 and 26. And I want to read this. This is not part of the article, but this is about the article. This article was written, copyrighted, and used by permission of Herbert W. Titus, who holds a law degree from Harvard University and taught constitutional law, common law, and other subjects for nearly 30 years at 5 different American Bar Association-approved law schools. From 1986 to 1993, he served as the founding dean of the College of Law and Government in Regent University, Virginia Beach, Virginia. He is the author of God, Man, and Law, The Biblical Principles, a widely acclaimed text on American common law. His ebooks on the common law and constitutional liberty are available at www.herbtitus.com, www.herbtitus.com. Amen. An amazing article giving us insight into the Bill of Rights based on the Word of God. Today is July the 31st, and this is the last day of July. We've read Psalms chapter 63, Esther, chapters 1 and 2, the book of Acts, chapter 26, Proverbs 27, and we learned a little bit about Oliver Wilcock, and then we read this rather lengthy but very informative article, A Scriptural Bill of Rights. God bless you. Have a wonderful rest of your day. And you know, I always say this, be sure to meditate on what you have heard today. God bless you, and we will see you again tomorrow.